Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, and welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. It's the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She's a woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, your sensuality, your soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. My guest on this week's Her Conversations is Alyssa Love. After overcoming her own personal challenges with disordered eating, struggling with weight and body dysmorphia, she now guides her clients to find love for their own bodies. As women in modern society, we're bombarded with a relentless barrage of messaging about our bodies, and very little of it is positive. Despite there being more visibility and seeming acceptance of body shapes that are different from the standard fashion model, the language used, like plus size, thick, curvy, still points out the difference. During our conversation, Alyssa shares how she uncovered one of the reasons she had gained weight, and how, having done so, she was able to release it overnight. Also, why we should have gratitude for the fat that's on our bodies. As always, I start each of these episodes by asking my guests. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel at your most her?
I feel most her when I'm teaching or when I'm like in circle with women. So a lot of times I'll do like women's circles and I'll have gatherings and rituals. And I feel like that's when I really tune into her, right? The great she. And it almost feels like it's channeled through me, and it creates this space for women to just like come together and to share and to open up. And that's when I feel like I step out of the way and she just takes over. And it's the best feeling ever. And it just feels so free, so flowing, so open. And that's when I feel most her.
Perfect, beautiful. And Alyssa, if you can just talk about your journey, the work that you're doing now is so important, so pivotal to the way that pretty much every woman feels. We all have been conditioned so much to have so many ideas about our body and what it should look like, and a comparison to an ideal that, to be honest, the majority of us don't even measure up to this ideal. Even the models or who are in these pictures, and the most gorgeous ones even don't look like that 24/7. So right. Because we're all on some level working with some sort of ideal that we're not matching up to, or some sort of issue on our body, and you're doing this work that's really helping women unpick that, which is great. How did you get to the point where this is what you do? What brought you to the realization where you realized that you could help?
Yeah, it's funny because this was what I struggled with the most throughout most of my life. And even now I have moments where I'm like, wait, this was my struggle. How can this be like what I'm here to teach? But I feel like that is what we're here to teach. Our lessons is just preparing us for what we're able to really connect with people on. And so for me, I started having body dysmorphia and binge eating and disordered eating when I was at least 9, right? And maybe even earlier than that. But it was something that really stemmed from not knowing how else to protect myself. And now I see that was what I went for. Food was something that was comforting. And I mean, yes, it tasted good, but it also helped me to literally like physically protect myself by patting my body. And when I started doing that and not even realizing it, I also looked around and saw that the girls around me didn't look that way. It just happened to be that the group of friends I was with were all very tall, slender, just, built in a different way than my body was built, even naturally, without holding the excess protection and padding, right? And so all it took was like one little comment from someone that pointed it out and, was maybe in a silly kind of joking way, but I will never forget that moment. That was the moment that I woke up to, oh my God, I look different than everyone else. And I shouldn't look this way. Like there's something wrong with the way I look. And it was, I think that was like one of the biggest moments in my life, when I started to, from then on, look at myself in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like that. And begin picking myself apart. And that just grew and grew and grew. And as I became more aware of, this happened super young. So as I started to move into middle school and high school, and these things are really exaggerated at that time, right? And we're starting to see all these idols that we have, and the magazines, and all these pictures of what we should look like. And it seemed like my number one goal in my life at that time was to reach that image, right? And to become that image. And everything else was not important to me. Everything else was put on the back burner. And it felt like in order to be accepted and to be truly loved and appreciated, I had to have that image, to fit into that image. And my value felt like it was dependent on how I looked. And so that, it plagued me, not even just through high school, but after as well, And so that led me to eventually studying holistic nutrition as a means to try to really control my body. And I had no intention at the time when I enrolled to teach people or anything like that. But as I moved through the program, I was like, oh, okay, I think I want to get into this in some way. But by the end of the program, I found myself the most overweight, unhappy, binging weekly, and stressed out ever. And I was like, wait, I got into this so that I could get out of this phase and so that I could cure this, right? And here I am knowing everything you could ever need to know about food and nutrients and what we should and shouldn't put in our bodies. And yet there was still something keeping me from doing those things and from treating myself in that way. And I felt so much guilt and shame and pressure from it. And that's when I had my other big moment in my life where I was just so aware that it was about something deeper and that I had to find or create my own way. And through that journey, that's what really sparked my spiritual awakening. And I began healing these deeper rooted pains and trauma and things that I had never looked at, right? It started to come to the surface. And that began my teaching, as well. I was already a yoga teacher at the time, and I had my certificate for holistic nutrition. So I thought I was going to be this yoga teacher, nutritionist girl. And I ended up shifting out of that and morphing into what I do now, which is really just about guiding women to removing these blocks and uprooting these things that are weighing them down, physically and energetically, and embracing their body, but also releasing that excess weight that they're hiding underneath, right?
Mm-hmm. And how do you deliver the work that you do? What form does it take if you're working one-to-one or a group, or what are your methods?
Yeah. So, it's definitely unique to everyone, but I do find that there's kind of like a foundation that everybody can begin with, right? And so the really important first step is to love yourself, which seems like the hardest thing to do when, we're taught that okay, do the diet, do the workouts, and then get into this shape and you'll love yourself. right? But you can't love yourself from hating yourself. You can't hate yourself into a shape that you love, right? And so the beginning and the foundation of this work is to build that self-love for where you are as you are, right? And to start really appreciating the excess weight that you have as protection, and seeing it as what it is, seeing it as something that has been there to console you and comfort you and protect you when you didn't know any other way. And starting to build that relationship with yourself, rebuild it, right? That self-love and awareness of your own divinity and of how magical and amazing you are before you can start to change anything, right? So that's where it really begins. And then from there, it's about changing your relationship with food. And I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, a lot of methods that I use to help us use our current behaviors with food as a mirror and as kind of like a doorway to recognizing what we're covering up with it. So there's a lot of work that I do with becoming, it's increasing our awareness around how we eat, what we eat, when we eat, why we eat, and what our entire relationship with food looks like, and starting to kind of recreate that relationship so that it's not that we're changing what we're eating, but we're aware, right? So I'm never telling people, okay, don't eat these foods. I don't ever give anyone a list of foods to eat and not eat, right? Any diet I ever did, or dietitian or nutritionist, that was always like what I would come home with was like, okay, eat this and not that, right? But it's actually about just creating awareness in what foods have I made to seem so evil, or what foods am I afraid of, or have like a complicated relationship with, and yet I'm still eating them on some level. And even if I know that if I eat this, it's going to cause pain or bloating or discomfort or anything, right? Why am I still doing it? And instead of judging yourself for it, and instead of trying to stop yourself from eating it, just allowing yourself to be mindful through the entire process and become aware of what's happening through that process, not just mentally, but in your physical body, in your energetic body, in your womb space, like what's going on, and beginning to document and kind of take in like evidence of what's going on. You start to see patterns and recognize things, and it can be a really awakening experience, actually.
It's good as well that you're saying to almost have that outside view and just observe what you're doing. When you were speaking as well, something a couple of things popped up to me that I want to ask you. One is that big question of what is self-love? What does it look like? How do you prescribe that to people? Because it's a word, it's a phrase that's bandied around so much. It's like love yourself, self-love.
Yeah.
But what does it look like? Because it's obviously more than just crystal baths. And candlelight, it's like, what does it really mean on a hard and fast and practical level? What is, in your definition, self-love?
It's so funny because my partner and I were talking about this the other day, was words that like are overused in the spiritual community. And even like spiritual community, I feel like is overused, but right. But self-love is one of those that it's just thrown around so much. And yet it is so important, right? But I feel like you're so right. Like it's not just about crystal baths. It's not just about, going and getting a massage, although these things are great and fun and amazing to do for yourself. But I really think that one of the most important aspects of self-love is the way that you speak to yourself. And if we can start to become aware, and we're all doing it, we all have this like tape playing in our mind, or this voice that's speaking and will kind of pop its head out, and speak up at different times. And it's noticing like how are we speaking to ourselves, right? What is that voice saying? What is the tone of it? And so many times it's very judgmental, very critical, mean even. We speak to ourselves in ways that we would never speak to anybody else, right? And we can be so hard on ourselves. And I think that it starts with just changing the dialogue in our minds. I have women that ask me like, I have, so many kids and I have so many, business stuff going on. I have so much going on. I don't have time for self-care. And self-care is not just bubble baths and massages, it's every single moment, the way that we speak to ourselves and the things that we say, the things that we are constantly saying and repeating, right? So starting by shifting that dialogue, but it's also, I think a big part of it too is standing up and speaking our minds, speaking our truth, right? So not holding back, not feeling like we have to be in that like good girl archetype all the time. And I think that that's something I know for me, that's how I was raised in a very, conservative religious family. And that good girl archetype was all that I was taught that I should be and that I should strive for. And I definitely played that out for a really long time. But in doing that, I wasn't loving and caring for myself because so many times I would bite my tongue or I would tiptoe around things or I wouldn't say what I was really feeling. I wasn't expressing myself. And, I think a lot of women were afraid to express ourselves or to really like speak our minds and speak up. But it's so important that's how we find our power. That's how we really love ourselves, is giving ourselves the space to be who we really are, right? and not holding not denying any part of ourselves, right? So it's loving all of the bits, not just the ones that are, appropriate to society or that we want to post on social media, right? It's about loving every single part of ourselves and allowing all those parts to be seen and to be shown.
And a vision, I had a visual when you were talking about not expressing yourself, because the opposite of expression is suppression. And when you're suppressing things, what you're doing to actually keep it in and impact it on the body and pardon me, and keep it within the body as well. I think you spoke about it when we spoke before, but I saw you did something on Instagram where you were talking about how you managed to lose weight almost overnight because it was like an emotional weight. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, back in the day, if I would gain weight, even like a pound, because I used to weigh myself, of course, daily. And that would just spark something so like a crazy cycle in me where I would feel like I'd have to starve myself or go on a juice cleanse or something like that and like run to the gym and do all of those things to get that weight off, right? To force it away. But now, because I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to tell you that my weight never fluctuates and that like, everything's perfect, right? But now when I do see my weight fluctuate and I see myself starting to hold a little bit of weight, I've just become aware that means that I need to do some digging, And so this happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I started to feel like, okay, I notice what's happening. I notice that my habits are supporting me holding a little excess weight. And instead of getting angry at myself for having those things or feeling guilt or shame about it, I said, there must be something deeper going on. Let me check it out. Let me do some soul searching, right? And through that, I realized that there was some things in my current relationship that were triggering past trauma. And even though that trauma, that those things were not really present, there was this part of me that was triggered and felt like I needed to protect myself. So even though that threat wasn't really there, You know, it was something in the past that was just in my head. It wasn't even real in front of me. I felt triggered. And so the way that and I know a ton of women do this, the way that I protect myself was by literally putting on that armor, right? Holding excess weight, giving myself padding. and the reason I was doing that was to create a wedge between my partner and I. And because it felt safer than being completely vulnerable and being completely open. Because in the past, that was too scary and that was a threat to me, you know? And so when I realized what I was doing and that was what was triggering me and causing me to hold this excess weight and causing me to choose habits that were supporting that excess weight, I had to have an uncomfortable conversation that was very vulnerable and very raw and very, not being in that good girl archetype. I had to just be like my true wild woman. Right. And I mean, thankfully I'm in a very like supportive relationship and my partner we can have these kinds of conversations and he'll support me in it. And so, it went over very well, even though like that fear in me was like, oh, I don't want to have this conversation. It's scary. And so, once that was over, literally overnight, by the next day, I felt completely different in my body. Mm-hmm. Like I was able to release. And I know that so many times the weight that we're holding, it's energetic and it manifests as physical weight. Right. And so it shows up, on our bodies, but it's actually things that we're holding in and we're not expressing, like you said, suppressing, and it packs on to our physical body. It's crazy.
And what, if you were to give someone a way to sit with that? Because for you who's done yoga and meditation and all of that, you know how to sit down and have that self-inquiry. But if someone's listening to this and they're going, okay, that kind of makes sense, but how do I sit and have a conversation with myself when I'm not used to kind of asking my body, what is it? Why is this coming? Yeah. What can you offer for that?
Yeah, because it's definitely a practice, and you're right. I have done a lot of yoga. I've been doing this work for a while. So now it's as soon as I tune in, I can hear the answer, but it's about beginning to unlock this wisdom in our body. And so a practice that I would say to start, like where I have all of my girls, all my clients and my girls in my group start is by tuning into our wombs. Right. And we actually hold so much wisdom in our womb, but this has been a space that becomes like our energetic junk drawer. And so this is where we hold on to those feelings of like guilt, shame, fear, those like lower frequency feelings. And it starts to kind of block that wisdom that we naturally have. Because our womb is actually a place meant for birthing life and birthing ideas and creativity. It's our creative portal, right? And so this is where I feel like I get all my wisdom, all my uploads come from my womb, right? This is like my direct connection to source. And so what I would recommend as a starting practice is just giving yourself, meditation is amazing, but in that, placing your hand on your womb and breathing in. So as you breathe in, you'll draw the air down towards the womb, fill up that space, and imagine you're like breathing in like clear, glistening white light into that space. And as you exhale, you can just imagine yourself releasing any of those lower vibration energies out of that womb space, right? And then maybe after a couple of times of doing that, inhaling the white light, exhaling any of that like energetic smog, you start to just tell her, I'm listening, right? And just telling your body or telling your womb that you're listening is so powerful. It's been craving that for so long, right? It tries to tell us, and And it tries to give us messages. It tries to speak to us. And sometimes it has to yell, it has to give us these messages in forms of pain or dis-ease or cramps, any kinds of like sensations of discomfort. And we often just want to numb it. But our body is trying to speak to us. It has all the answers that we could ever need within it. And so that's where my passion really lies, is in teaching women how to access this wisdom that they have in their own bodies. But just beginning by telling your body and telling your womb that you're listening, that alone is life-changing.
And I'm thinking of commercials that I remember seeing on TV. It's like the woman alone in a flat and she's just been jilted by a boyfriend, and then she goes and either she gets like a bar of chocolate or a tub of ice cream, and she sits down on the sofa and then she just like spoons it all down. It's just like you get fed this idea that this is how you deal, this is how you're looking after yourself when you're feeling down. And of course then we have this association with chocolate and ice cream of them being bad foods and fattening foods. So when you're feeling bad, then give yourself something bad,
right?
And then all the guilt that comes with that. All the guilt that comes with that as well. Again, talking about how the media gives us so many different ideas of how we should treat our bodies. When we're feeling bad, we should feed ourselves like chocolate and ice cream, and then when we want to be good to ourselves, then we should go on the detox or the fasting or the cleansing, and then we have these rigorous like teas and shakes and juices. It's like, speak on that. Where's all that coming from?
Oh, and that's so celebrated too, right? If you see a woman who's like, oh, I've been juicing for 7 days, you're like, oh my God, good job, girl. You got it, right? It's like, you look great. Keep it up. I remember probably the craziest diet I ever tried. I made it up when I was 16. I thought it would be a great idea to only eat canned green beans for 2 weeks before my 16th birthday, because I wanted to, drop weight quickly before my party. And so I literally would only eat, I had like 3 cans a day of green beans. And, this was when like Weight Watchers was really big. So I was counting points and I knew that green beans were 0 points. So I could literally, drop like 10 pounds in 2 weeks if I stuck to it. Right. And I did. And, I'd walk around my high school with a can. I didn't even pour them into like a bowl or anything. I ate it out of a can. I would walk around with my can, eating my green beans, and people would literally high five me. They were like, you're doing so good. They were so supportive of it. And they're like, you look great. Meanwhile, I'm starving myself. Like, green beans is not enough to eat for 2 weeks. It's probably not even at that point, like it's canned and salty and like so processed. It's not even any nutrients. And people are high-fiving me and celebrating it. And that's just building me up and like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Like, I'm changing my body. Now people love and accept me because I'm torturing myself. And I think that this is really what we see a lot is this kind of messed up idea of, well, here's where I think it starts, is that we see excess weight or we see fat as something to hate, something to banish and be upset about, when it's protection and it's actually something that's been there to support us. And, like we spoke on a little earlier, we have to create that gratitude for it and say like, thank you for being there when I didn't know what else to do. But now I'm learning these new things and I can release you now, your services are no longer needed. Right. But we come at it in this very like hateful place of like, what did they say? Like, I feel like I used to do all these like boot camp classes and they'd be like, sweat is fat crying, or they say things like this that were just so negative and so angry, like so much anger towards yourself, right? Towards that fat that's on your body. It's part of you, right? And so I think that's where it's really backwards, is that we think that because we look this certain way, because we're holding excess weight, or just shaped differently, right? It's not even always about holding excess weight. If we're just shaped differently than these images that we've been fed for so long, we think we have to hate ourselves more to change it, right? We think we have to punish ourselves for being that way. And in reality, it's like we really need to be loving ourselves more and healing ourselves, not punishing and being mean to ourselves, right?
And it's thinking about what the ideal is nowadays, or is there, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think there is an ideal still, or is there's more visibility of different shapes? We've got, I hate this word, but plus size models that are not really that plus size if you think about it. As well as we've got the models, the conventionally very, very slim kind of models as well, that are still in the majority than the others. But people are happier to accept that curvier girls, thicker girls can wear clothes and still look good. But then but are women really accepting of that, do you think?
Well, I feel that there is a big change happening and we are becoming much more accepting, right? Overall. But at the same time, like, I know when I grew up, Kate Moss was like the look, right? That very like wafy, thin,
heroin
whereas
shape.
like, yes. Whereas like you have to be born with those size bones to ever be able to look that way. Even if I did only eat green beans for the rest of my life, I will never look like Kate Moss. And that's okay, but having that ideal was very stressful, for somebody that just had, curves and didn't know what to do with them at that time. Right. Whereas now I feel like there's a different ideal with the whole like Kardashian look, you know what I mean? With like the big boobs, the tiny waist, and then the big butt, but like no cellulite. You know what I mean? It's like this doll that, on one hand, I do feel like that coming in brought a little bit more acceptance of like different shapes, but it's also become this other impossible ideal to work towards, right? And so, although I do feel like overall there is a shift happening and people are being more accepting of, different shapes and different sizes and different looks. I really think it depends on where you're training your eye, and, for me, I know that when it was at its worst, my body dysmorphia and binge eating and disordered eating, it was when I was following all of these like fit chicks on social media. And I was constantly training my eye to see this, quote unquote ideal body that didn't look like what I looked like, whereas these girls they're making their living by doing this every single day in and day out, right? And I was comparing myself to that constantly rather than giving myself like a realistic just like view of the world and of all different shapes and sizes, right? So if you're training your eye to see things in that light constantly, it's going to reflect back on you as judgment when you don't measure up to that. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think with the Kardashian clan, there's so much augmentation there to the point of, I mean, it's skilled work because up
Right.
until, you know, like whoever's doing the work, it's a skill in itself, because up until relatively recently, particularly facial surgery looked rough.
Yes.
It looked really odd. And one thing I've noticed more so in, actually I've seen some older women with it, but especially kind of girls who are like late teens, which is like crazy age to start doing this kind of stuff, and early 20s are doing just the duck thing on,
Yes.
you know, the duck thing on the lips, that just in real life it looks crazy. I mean, it only looks good in a selfie when you're caught in a moment.
Yeah.
But then, well, does it look good? It kind of captures a mood, and it's interesting that the things that I got teased as a younger girl, having a bigger butt, having thick lips, is now the ideal that
Yeah.
and spending, you know, thousands of pounds to get poison inserted into their body to kind of meet this ideal, and then think that they're going to be happier for it. But it just leads to this constant, well, I've done that, then I'm going to get some fillers, and then I'm going to do that. And the Kardashians have made billions out of it.
Yeah.
And it's not even an ideal. And also for a long time, the fact that they were denying that they were doing any of that, and now are only starting to then admit that they used it. There was makeup and lighting and all of that, but there was a lot of augmentation going on there. It's like, how can we then speak to the heart of young girls who are looking directly, because it's, when I was growing up, we didn't have mobile. When I was young, you know what I mean? It was like we didn't have social media. It was magazines and it was TV. So at least if I wanted to get fed those images, I still had to go physically to buy those things. Whereas now it's with you constantly, and we're so addicted to our devices, whether we want to admit or not, that, you know, you constantly get fed the ideal, like second by second by second. And I'm, you know, for me, and I can't say that I didn't get affected by the images that I saw in magazines at all, because I did. But, you know, at least I can look back at it and go, well, at least it's not now, where I'm just coming up like 8, 9, 10 years old and being fed that. It's like, how, as a parent or as women in a community seeing younger girls, how can we start to show them that that it is what it is, but it's not everything, and it's not who you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really feel like it's so, oh man, if I have a daughter, like in this age, it's going to be crazy, right? Because it's true. It's just in your face all the time. And I feel like it's something that we need to start teaching our girls and our young women from an early age, is that self-love and that self-acceptance, you know, like straight away. But what I really feel like that takes is us teaching them about the wisdom in their bodies, right? So that they get in touch with their bodies right away. And instead of being in their heads, like so many of us grow to be, and out of our bodies, they're able to feel when something's off, right? So one thing that I really teach a lot of is, if you're on social media or you're on your computer or whatever, and you start to feel any of that tension or contraction in your body, then it means like something's triggering you. It's time to like stop or take a look at what's going on, you know? And if we could start teaching girls to be that aware of their bodies at a young age, and to notice when that's triggering them, and like, okay, do you want to continue that feeling by continuing to look at these images, or do you want to feel good, right? And make feeling good a priority, because your body tells you. But the problem is that we're so in our heads that we get stuck in that scroll, and we could be scrolling for an hour, and then all of a sudden we're exhausted, we feel terrible about ourselves, and we're like sick to our stomach, right? And we're like, why do I feel this way? Advil. And it's like, no, your body has been trying to tell you. And the more in tune that we can be, then I think we can start to avoid that. I mean, it's going to be there inevitably, but if we're continuing, it's like where you choose to focus your eye. If you're continuing to feed yourself with these things that aren't real, right? Like you said, it's augmented. It's not even real. It's not reality. And we're also putting our value in, we're literally like putting all the value in how it looks, right? And in just the appearance and just the outside, right? So starting to shift that, right? And starting it from a young age. I mean, I think that's what's really important.
And also retraining ourselves as well, because sometimes I think we don't even realize the conversations that we have amongst ourselves. Those little girls are observing, they're listening, they're taking things on, and their little minds are kind of working things into one way or another. And like you said, like innocent remarks that can be made to you when you're really, really young are the things that just imprint and set your view of how you view your body. And then you're always kind of standing in front of the mirror and just honing in on that. For me, it was always, I was an athlete when I was younger. So it was necessary for me to have strong legs, because I was using the muscles, but when you're surrounded by people who are just going to always point them out, it's like, oh my God, you've got thick legs and a bit. It's like, but I was down at the track training like 3 nights a week as well, extensively. But when you're young, you just don't put the two together, do you? Really, you just think there's something wrong, and then I want to do this, and it's learning that.
And I think also, just to kind of piggyback on that, is the way that we speak to little girls. Like, we usually compliment them on how pretty they are, how cute their dress is, or, like that's all we ever really tell them is like, oh, you're so beautiful. You're so pretty. You're a princess. You're, I love your outfit. And like, why are we only telling them compliments on their appearance, And, when we see little boys, what do we say? Like that they're strong, and maybe we do say those kinds of things too, but so it's for both, right? It's changing, like, what do we show them that we value, right? And of course, it starts from within. Like you said, it's about noticing, like, the conversation we're having with ourselves first. But and I guess it doesn't even have to be little girls. It's like with our friends and with our coworkers and with our peers. What are we complimenting each other on, and what are we pointing out all the time? Right? Can we go beyond the surface and into like the deeper things that we all this deeper magic that we all hold, right?
And also to say in a and to be truthfully complimentary about it when you mean it as well, because sometimes you can have a compliment, and I've had it before, that you hear the words, but the energy behind it, it's like, this is not a compliment, this is someone putting something on here that I don't know what I'm triggering with them, or I don't know why they're unhappy about what they're unhappy with themselves about, and it's turning into this almost like an accusation of things like that. I've had it done to me on a couple of occasions, and it was confusing because it came from the most unlikely people. People that you'd already think that are quite secure in themselves, and yet they come to you with, if I've been going to the gym and starting to be like, oh, I don't think you need to do any more now. It's like, because it's kind of like showing them where they're feeling that maybe you're leaving them behind, or there's a lot of that underlying envy between women, and mistrust and a lack of support. So it's that sisterhood as well needs to be built, and the trust needs to be built, because we're still for the most part pitted against each other, and there's this like competition of, like you say, that princess thing. It's like, who's the fairest of them all, and and the ideal is, this is what pretty is, and then everything else like that is like an also ran.
Right.
And then usually it's, I think, I don't even remember the name of it as well, but I saw that there was something coming on Netflix that was about, I can't remember the name of the program, but it was almost about a woman who, as a young child, she was bigger, and then the whole story of like losing. I think one of the Kardashian sisters had a program that was based on something like this, but this is more dramatic, where it's you have a revenge body. It's like you go through something, and like you were chubby once, and then you come back and you're all slim and successful, and you showed them all. But like, it's like that only put in that when you lose the weight, then you've won.
Yeah.
And this is a battle cry.
Yeah. That's so true. Did you ever see that movie I Feel Pretty with Amy Schumer?
No, but I heard about it. I never saw it.
Oh my God. It's so good. So basically, long story short, or entire movie short, she like hits her head and blacks out. And when she wakes up, when she looks in the mirror, she sees something different. Mm-hmm. And she sees herself being pretty, even though nothing, she didn't change. She looks exactly as she did. And in the beginning, she really is hating on herself and crying in the mirror and unhappy with how she looks. So now she thinks that she's beautiful the way she wanted to be. And her entire life changes. Like she gets her dream job, she gets her dream man, like everything falls into place because of this like inner confidence that she has, even though nothing actually changed on the outside. Right. And I just think that there needs to be more movies like that, right? There needs to be like more, every woman should see that movie, because it so speaks to how much value we put in our exterior, but it's not even about that. We think that it is. And, we can get to this point where we look the way we always thought we wanted to look, and we're still not happy. Right. And, like I've been there in the past where I got the dream body that I always wanted. And I was going to the gym twice a day and starving myself and completely miserable and had no life, And I was like, okay, I'm here, but like, why am I not happy? And that's not where our value and our worth lies. Right. And I think that that's what needs to be communicated more and more. Just with, women like me and you, and also in the media where it's possible. But yeah.
I wanted to ask you, have you ever worked with anybody who has either considered or has been through the bariatric surgery?
I haven't actually. No, I haven't.
No. And how do you feel about that as a solution in terms of, I have an idea what you might think, but I want to hear it from you.
I mean, I think that if anybody is wanting to go about it in that way, like, please call me first. Because it's not that, I understand. I did know a woman, she was my client before I was doing this work, that had the surgery. And she was kind of at the point where her doctor was like, we need to do something and do it quickly because your health is suffering, and things could be, things could come up quickly if something doesn't change. Right. But I remember I don't remember exactly what it was, but her diet after the surgery was so odd to me, the things that she could and couldn't eat. And I saw it being such an unhealthy, mentally an unhealthy thing to do. And unfortunately she ended up, she did lose a lot of weight and ended up gaining it all back, which is even worse than if she hadn't had the surgery in the beginning. Right. I know it puts a lot of pressure on it, but, so it's never just about what you're eating and what you're not eating. There's a deeper struggle that's going on. And if you don't address that, then even surgery won't be enough to cure this for you. The only cure, it doesn't come from anything outward. It's an inner journey. Right. And so, there's a lot of other things that need to be uncovered and released so that you can release it in a healthy and and sustainable way, because that's what ends up happening a lot of times. Even if people don't go about surgery, but they do a diet or a workout program and they drop the weight, so this protection that they had and that they were using to protect and comfort themselves all of a sudden is gone. Now they feel vulnerable and raw and scared and unsafe. So, unconsciously, they're going to do whatever it takes to feel safe again. And usually that means gaining the weight back. So that's why a lot of times, even though you see people have successful weight loss with a program, as soon as they stop, or they stop soon because they don't feel comfortable standing on their own. So it's not just about let's get you to lose the weight. It's about building that power and that strength from within at the same time, and making it like this dance of unpeeling these layers and building yourself up at the same time.
And I know of a couple of people who've actually been through the process, and the second one, I hope I used to work with her, and I really hope that she's okay, because I've not seen her for a year or so, and what she went through leading up to the surgery, because she was, I suppose they call it morbidly obese. She had a lot of weight. She struggled with even walking. She was on a rail load of tablets for diabetes, arthritis, all this kind of stuff. And she was the same age as me, but we look completely different. And she'd been through a lot of different traumatic experiences through her life, from young abuse, and then she had a lot of difficulties in relationships, and she had a very sick child and everything like that. So all of these things were part of that was on her. But she was always going to the doctor, and she was holding out in real hope that this surgery was going to be the liberation on the other side of it. And when she used to tell me about the way that they prepared her for the surgery, for the doctor put her on what they called a liver shrinking diet, and she had to drink gallons of cow's milk. I was just when she was telling me this, I didn't even know what to say. It's I'm well, is anyone speaking to you about your diet or anything like that?
Right.
And then eventually she had the surgery, and then she lost a lot of weight. And for a while she was really happy, because then she could kind of wear what normal clothes, just go into the shop and pick it up. But then she became really, really ill. And I don't really see her Facebook feed come up that now. But it was just a lot of things of, it seemed like she was dying. It's the saddest thing to say, because she went into hospital a lot, and then she was having problems with her liver, and it was real stuff that was going on. So from one, there was no health really. She kind of was unhealthy when she was at her heaviest. She went through the surgery and then lost weight, but then there was a list of things say that she couldn't have. She couldn't do this, she couldn't do that, she couldn't do that. And I always hope that she's okay, and there's part of me that just thinks, I don't know if she's going to make, because she never got educated, or the reasons why she protected herself with all of that weight in the first place ever addressed, because that's not really what the medical profession do. And you've got to really almost pit yourself to get this surgery. It's almost like a game. It's like an application. It's like applying for a job almost. It's you win the surgery, and of course in the UK it's on the NHS, and so most people don't actually have to pay for it. And then another thing I was thinking of is the woman, I don't remember her name, who was on The Biggest Loser years ago, who had lost a lot of weight, to the point where when they had the reveal, the opposing judges, they were in shock when she stepped up, because she looked anorexic from someone who'd gone on. And I think that she gained the weight back as well. And it's like you're saying, that real internal work, and yet it's like a game show.
Yeah.
The whole thing. this game show. It's like getting up at the crack of dawn and running with tires on your back up hills, and eating, drinking smoothies, and just kind of standing on a scale and celebrating a loss or a gain, and feeling so disheartened if over that 1 week you've put on a pound. You might be on your period for, you know what I mean?
Right.
We all know what that'll do to you for the week. So it's just like what you're doing, getting the conversation, getting the mindset into starting to listen and connect to our bodies in a way that we can actually hear what it's trying to tell us. And also, do you ever speak to people or your clients about speaking with food? You know, clients, because I know for myself, sometimes you go into a shop and be like, I really fancy that, and then it's like, okay, if I eat that, I will feel like this. Am I prepared for that kind of thing? Do you ever train them that way?
Yeah. So I believe that we can pretty much eat anything that we want. So, which is a little maybe different than what most people teach. Because we have this whole idea of what is like a healthy food and what is an unhealthy food. But I actually see it more in a high vibration, lower vibration. And it's a scale, right? It's not, this is good and this is bad, but where does that food lie on the scale? And so, of course, our body is going to more easily process the higher vibration foods. But because we are so powerful, we literally can influence and shift the vibration of that food. So that's why you might see people that do eat, what you would think is like a very clean, quote unquote, healthy diet. And they still are overweight or unhealthy because their thoughts and their beliefs about the food and their intention behind eating it is a lower vibration, right? So if the intention is, I hate my body and I want to, get rid of my stomach or whatever, and that's why I'm going to eat this salad, then that salad went from being a high vibration, like natural food, to lowering that vibration. And now you're putting that lower vibration into your body, and it's only continuing to affirm that thing that you don't want, right? Whereas we can also, so it's, of course, it's easier for us to align our thoughts and our inner story and dialogue with the higher vibration food, right? And eat those higher vibration foods and produce the desires that we want, with how we want to feel, how we want to look. But it's also possible with those lower vibration foods, right? That the things that, like we were saying, ice cream and chocolate, right? We have this idea and this belief that if we eat it, it's bad for us and it's associated with guilt. But there's some work and exercises that I do that help us to start, kind of debunking that and removing that, so that we can enjoy those things that, like ice cream's delicious and I love chocolate, doesn't mean that that's all I'm going to eat, but there's times that I tune into my body and I'm hungry and I'm craving something like that. And I want to give myself that pleasure, right? It's okay for us to feel pleasure from food and to enjoy that, right? So if we can get to a place where we align ourselves with both being able to accept and feel pleasure and also kind of like disarming that food from all the negative beliefs that we've held about it for so long, then we can eat it and not feel the effects of it like we used to. So I'm sure or you've seen people that can eat whatever they want and they never gain weight. And you're like, oh, it must be their genes. It must be this. It must be that. I bet you anything, their beliefs about that food is different than somebody who doesn't have that experience,
And it's interesting you said genes, because I literally just wrote down genetics. This question, what are your thoughts on genetics? Do you think there's a family is genetically disposed? Is that the phrase? Genetically disposed to a particular shape, or is it the habits that are that they're forming all around themselves, or the thoughts that they all have around a certain food? How do you feel about genetics?
Well, so I am not a science-based kind of girl. I am woo-woo all the way.
Uh-huh.
But I can speak from my own, from my own genetics and my own family, looking at our body types, the way that we hold ourselves, but also the way that we deal with things, the way that I was taught to deal with things, the way my mom was taught to deal with things, the culture that my family grew up in, the country being different, and having all those elements to kind of like point us into the direction of having a certain kind of body type and having a certain kind of eating habits, right? Storing our energy in a certain way. And so genetics might be something that we can look at and say like, oh, well, we have this gene that means that we're going to have thick thighs, or that we're going to hold weight in our bellies, and sure, maybe that's the case. But I think that, and I know that there's a lot being done with, showing how we can actually change our DNA, and how it's not something that's set in stone, right? There's things that we can literally shift, and that's happening at an energetic level, right? And so I do think that genetics is a part of it, but it doesn't determine our fate, right? So, yeah, like I said, I am not a doctor or a scientist in any way, but that's my own belief about it.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You find the people who say that they're big boned from a big bone family or a heavyset family or anything like that, and I like to, I've not read all of his books, but very much into Bruce Lipton, and he's all about epigenetics. So it's more environmental, and these things can change as well, especially if you do look at a family, you see like one of the kids might move away and like live very much further away from the family, and then they come back, you can see there's been a change in them. So a lot of the time it's environmental, and the environment affects their thoughts and going forward, and like you say as well. So I want to ask you some of the questions that I like to ask all the women as well. So the first one is just finding out, what is the best piece of advice a woman has ever given to you?
I forget who it was, but whoever told me to start tracking my cycle, and not just the days that I bleed, but my entire cycle, like day by day, and watching the fluctuations of my hormones. Whoever that woman is, like, thank you so much, girl. That changed my life. Tracking my cycle has been like the most life-changing thing, and learning how to work with it and not feel like I need to be showing up the same way every single day, right? And living very linear, because we're cyclical beings, as women and humans, right? But especially as women, that's like how we are programmed, is in cycles. And so that, hands down, best thing I have ever been told.
Great. And is it a conversation? Do you share the cycle? Do you live with your partner?
Yes.
So do you share that between you, so at least he knows where you're coming from on a certain day?
Oh yeah. He is probably like one of the most knowledgeable men on cycles. Like, he's actually very like curious and open about it, which is great. But I mean, every day I'm like, oh, day 15, and he like knows what it means.
Lucky. Good for you. And what woman would you say represents higher energetic resonance to you?
So I am in love with Lisa Lister. She actually, I don't know, are you familiar with her work?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. So she, her books have like changed my life. But she does a lot of work with the womb and with cycles, and teaching women how to get in touch with their bodies. And she was a huge inspiration for me, but I feel like she just holds that like divine goddess energy. and she speaks her truth, and she shares her realness and her struggles and her victories with you, and it's beautiful. So she is like my girl.
Perfect. And what's your favorite self-care ritual or practice?
Well, I would say getting in nature, going to the beach. I live in Los Angeles, so I'm not too far, but to get there, I have to kind of battle traffic. But when I decide like I'm going to do it, even though I have to, be in traffic, whatever, getting there and like putting my feet in the sand and in the ocean, that is like magic for me. Connecting with nature is, I think, so, so, so important, especially for everyone. Yes. But like for women, like we really need to come back to nature and recreate that relationship with her, because that's part of what speaks to us and what inspires us and what moves us. So nature, that's the big one for me.
And what's coming up next for you? What programs are you working on? What workshops are you doing?
So I have a program that I just launched a couple days ago called Blissful Body. And I'm not sure when you're airing this, but it's starting on August 1st. So, well, the doors close August 1st. We'll start a couple weeks after that. But this is going to be a 14-day intensive. So we are going to be diving into all of these, a lot of what we spoke about today, a lot of the reasons that we may be holding excess weight. And there's a part of us that wants to lose it, but there's that part of us that doesn't, right? The part of us that sees it as protection, as comfort, as, separation from getting too vulnerable or too intimate. And so we'll be diving into all of those different reasons that we may not want to manifest weight loss, and healing those things, and giving tools and exercises to actually start clearing that, so that we can not only release the excess weight, but live in this like freedom and in this bliss. And so that's what I'm like super excited about right now. But I always have new things coming up. It's like always, I'm feeling so creative lately. So thankful for that.
I know about that creative. It's just sometimes it comes and then it just comes like bullets at you. It's like idea. But you just said something about vulnerability, and I just wanted you to maybe expand on that a little bit. Just when you do start to shed the weight and you've kind of convinced yourself, okay, this is it, I'm going to start to shed the weight. And like, as you shed the weight, you do start to feel more exposed, more vulnerable. What are some of the things that come up? In terms of...
So a lot of times it's women that feel there's actually a worthiness aspect that comes up, where they don't feel worthy to be seen or worthy to be heard, or like they are good enough to speak their minds or to say what they really mean, right? So that's a big part of it, is building that inner self-worth and inner self-love, so that you can start to share what we've been holding in. So many of us hold so much in, and we don't say what we really mean. We say what we think will keep other people comfortable. And for us to be able to show up as we really are, in our truth, in our rawness, like the nitty gritty and the shiny parts, that's what a big part of this work is, because releasing that ends up releasing not only that energetic, but the physical weight as well. And it's that dance of releasing that, but building that strength within and that confidence to do that, and to know that you're safe and that you're secure and you're supported. And it's okay to be seen. It's okay to speak your mind. And I think a lot of us have these like imprints, whether you believe in past lives or just like ancestral DNA, or just in what it is to be a woman. We have this imprint of it not being safe to trust other women. It's not safe to speak your mind. It's not safe to, like embrace your power and your magic. And so this is something that's like really deeply rooted in us, and just beginning to slowly, and that's why I love doing this in a group, because this is our like safe container to slowly start to share these things and to feel that evidence of being held and being safe when you do become vulnerable and when you are raw. So it's not just like, all right, here's the tools, good luck. We kind of have that safe space, and we create that sisterhood, and you see it in women that we're yearning it so deeply, because the minute you give them that permission, they just want to open up like immediately, and it's so beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you. I just felt it was nice to kind of elaborate on that. So where can we find out about you online?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social medias. So on Instagram, it's iam.alyssa.love. And I'm Alyssa Love on Facebook as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's Alyssa with a Y as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Alyssa.
Yeah, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alyssa, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on to Her Conversations and speaking with me about what is a vital subject, and it just affects every single one of us on some level, whether big or small, whether we want to admit it. And I really hope that this gets received, and good luck with your program and everything that's coming up for you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much. I loved it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Alyssa, for being a guest on this week's Her Conversations. And if you want to find out more about Alyssa, remember you can also come via my website, which is carolmaywhittick.com. That's CarolMaewhittick. And go to Her Connections, and you can put in Alyssa or weight or body, and it will bring up the episode that you've just heard. Also, if you want to search on any previous episodes, or you have any keywords or issues that you want to see if I've spoken to anyone that might be able to help and serve you to overcome that, go to Her Connections and put your keywords in there. And just once again saying thank you to you for joining me for another week of Her Conversations. You can also find me on Facebook and also on Twitter and on Instagram under Kazmic, that's CAZMICK. So until the next week, enjoy yours and see you again. Bye.